With energy prices rising globally, inflation skyrocketing, and the expensive winter heating season upon us, for many of you, the last thing on your mind is climate change. But that is exactly what has been on the mind of many global leaders as they recently wrapped up the 27th UN Conference on Climate Change, known as COP27. Yes, global leaders, climate activists, and even celebrities descended upon the Egyptian coastal resort town of Sharm el-Sheikh for the conference to hash out new policies, new programs, and new commitments. So what exactly was committed to and by whom? What did Canada have to say at COP27? Are Canadians doing enough, paying enough with rising carbon taxes? When some families have concerns about making ends meet and paying their mortgages with higher interest rates looming, is this the time for Canada to be focusing on climate actions? And is any of this actually accomplishing the stated goal to slow global warming? Well, joining me now is Dan McTeague, President of Canadians for Affordable Energy. Dan, thanks for coming on today. So please tell us what happened at COP27. It recently wrapped up at that luxury seaside resort. What exactly was achieved at this conference?
Well, I think 800 jets came in and flew out to a nice little area of the world that not many people have access to. I know a little bit about the place in my old days in foreign affairs, and it certainly is quite the Tony location to be, standing on your pulpit and, of course, lecturing the world on how they're doing bad things. I think the irony was obviously in the visuals, which was why do you need to be there? You could have chosen any other place on the continent of Africa, which of course is preparing itself to try to catch up to the rest of the world. And to do so, they're not going to be doing it with solar panels and windmills. They're going to be doing it with fossil fuels, hydrocarbons such as oil and gas. But the agenda obviously was one of the same. It's as if the world hasn't changed. It's as if we haven't had an invasion in Europe. It's as if we haven't seen a recovery from COVID, demand shooting up and supply simply not being there. It's as if we've completely ignored the inflationary effects of all of these things. And we've, again, thought that there's really no consequence here other than to come back and say, well, we have to agree that we have to do everything we can to prevent temperatures from rising 1.5 degrees.
Right.
I think there comes a point when you do these things every year, and it's always a last minute rush to the end. And then, of course, a major, massive commitment of monies to parts of the world that believe that they're getting the short end of the stick, that you have to start to really call these things for what they are. An exercise in baffle gab with a bunch of people gathering, swilling back Perrier, eating canapes, while the rest of the world has to deal with the bitter reality of energy scarcity.
And apparently a lot of them in some uber air-conditioned facilities. I heard the air conditioning was jacked up so high, it was actually quite cold for a lot of these delegates, wanting to reduce the world's temperature by 1.5 degrees. It sounded like what you were suggesting is there was almost a tone deafness. And you're right, there have been some massive international issues. Obviously, energy prices around the world are skyrocketing. It does sound, when a certain global elites, if you will, and the global leaders gather, that there is a tone deafness when we're worried about one thing, but the rest of us are wondering, how are we going to access energy if you're in Europe, and what cost will that come at? One thing that did come out, and you did hint at it, was climate reparations. This is the first time I've ever heard of climate reparations. Could you explain what this is and how you think this will be rolled out?
Well, the idea is, of course, damage to the environment, but also that there are nations which have never been able to take advantage of hydrocarbons, the benefits, the improvements in agricultural output, the improvements in the quality of life, the ability for us to pretty much produce everything and anything that shows why the world population has increased and has done so with lowering mortality rates. And despite some bad weather from time to time, being able to manage those and to adapt. But yes, the idea was to somehow penalize parts of the world that have done very well by the use of hydrocarbons, responsible as they are, especially a country like Canada, and as it were, to pay some form of reparations to parts of the world that have not been able to enjoy quite the same benefit. It's actually a little ironic rather than promoting the idea of getting hydrocarbons like natural gas and nuclear. Well, that's of course not a hydrocarbon, but getting newer technologies that have advantaged the world to those parts of the world that have never been able to really benefit from them. We're instead saying pay as you go, and pay some people some money so that at the end of the day we give this sort of idea that we've paid penance for something that that we've done.